Hey guys, tonight we are gently peeling back the heavy velvet curtains of time to find ourselves not in a field of battle, nor at a grand state occasion, but in the quiet, almost frozen intimacy of a Victorian gentleman's bedchamber as he begins his day. Imagine, if you will, the profound, bone-deep chill of an era before central heating was anything more than a fanciful dream for most. You're about to experience the kind of morning routine that makes our modern dash from duvet to hot shower seem like a spa vacation. Frankly, faced with this level of pre-dawn Arctic misery and elaborate personal maintenance, you probably wouldn't survive the first hour without yearning for your smartphone and a thermostat. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It always helps the channel find other connoisseurs of historical discomfort. Oh, and I'd love to see where you're all tuning in from tonight. Drop your city or country and your local time in the comments below. It's always fascinating to see our little community of history sleep enthusiasts. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first unwelcome tendrils of consciousness begin to snake their way into your slumber. It's not a gentle awakening, not the sort induced by slowly brightening sunlight or the melodious chirping of digital birds. No, this is more of a reluctant surrender, a slow retreat from the relatively blissful oblivion of sleep into the stark, cold reality of a late 19th century morning. Your eyelids, heavy as lead weights, flicker open to a dim, gray light filtering through thick, probably velvet, draperies that seal the tall windows like the very gates of Morpheus. The air in the room is not just cool, it's actively, bitingly cold. You can feel it on your face, the only part of you bravely or foolishly exposed beyond the mountain range of blankets, quilts, and perhaps a heavy counterpane that form your current, deeply cherished, personal climate zone. This bed, a substantial four-poster or a grand, carved mahogany affair, is less a piece of furniture and more your staunchest ally against the tyranny of the unheated Victorian bedroom. Truly your only friend in this specific, chilly world. A sound, subtle at first, then more insistent, confirms that the day has indeed begun, whether you approve or not. It might be the distant, muffled clang of the household stirring in the nether regions of the kitchen, or, more immediately, the soft creak of your bedroom door. Perhaps it's your valet, Jeevesworth or some such stalwart, entering with the hushed efficiency of a particularly well-trained ghost, or maybe a housemaid, equally discreet, tasked with the mission of coaxing life into the dormant fireplace. If a servant does enter, they move with a practiced quiet, their footsteps barely registering on the thick Persian rug that covers a portion of the dark. Polished floorboards? They might place a small can of hot water on your washstand or draw back those formidable curtains, just a fraction. An act that feels like a personal affront to your desire to hibernate until April. You burrow deeper into the feather mattress, a sigh escaping your lips, a visible puff of condensation in the frigid air. The room around you is a symphony in mahogany, walnut, and heavy textiles. A towering wardrobe looms in one corner, a dressing table laden with mysterious silver-backed brushes and glass containers in another. Perhaps a somber oil painting of a stern-faced ancestor stares down at you from above the mantelpiece, silently judging your reluctance to embrace the invigorating morning air. And it is invigorating, in the same way that being unexpectedly submerged in an icy pond is invigorating, a shock to the system that you could frankly do without. The prevailing medical theories of the time often championed the benefits of such bracing conditions, suggesting that sleeping in cold rooms built character and resilience. Historians still argue whether the common Victorian practice of enduring cold bedrooms was primarily due to technological limitations, economic thrift, or indeed these prevailing medical theories about hardiness. It's a well-established historical fact that Victorian bedrooms, even in affluent homes, often lacked dedicated heating. While the main reception rooms might boast roaring fires, the private chambers upstairs were frequently left to the mercy of the elements. with perhaps a small, inefficient fireplace that did little to combat the pervasive chill, especially in the depths of winter. Any warmth it might have offered from the night before has long since surrendered to the cold, leaving only a faint scent of old ashes. Your breath continues to plume before you, a constant reminder of the temperature differential between the sanctuary of your bed and the Arctic exploration that awaits on the other side of the covers. You consider your options. Option 1: remain here indefinitely, slowly evolving into a human icicle, a monument to the joys of procrastination. Option 2: summon every ounce of willpower, every shred of stoic Victorian fortitude you possess, and face the day. The thought of that first contact between bare feet and the cold floorboards is a powerful deterrent. It's not just cold, it's a profound, soul-seeping cold that feels almost personal. Perhaps there's a small rug strategically placed beside the bed, a tiny island of slightly less intense cold in the vast ocean of frigidity. But it's a minor concession. Some Victorians, in a quirky attempt to mitigate this, might have had warming pans, metal containers filled with hot coals, run through the sheets before bedtime. But that warmth is now a distant, cherished memory. The only warmth now is what your own body can generate and desperately cling to beneath the cocoon of bedding. The decision to finally emerge is less an act of will and more a reluctant capitulation to the inevitable march of the clock and the demands of your station. Slowly, cautiously, you begin to contemplate the Herculean effort of actually getting up. With a groan that seems to emanate from the very depths of your Victorian soul, you finally cast aside the comforting tyranny of the bedclothes, that final, warm embrace we established in Section 1. The moment your feet touch the polished floorboards, or perhaps that small, inadequate rug we hoped was there, the cold attacks with renewed vigor. It's a sharp, invasive chill that races up your legs, a stark reminder that the bed was indeed your only true sanctuary. You stand there for a moment, a shiver shimmying its way up your spine, clad only in your nightshirt, a flimsy cotton shield against the onslaught. Your breath still puffs out in white clouds, a personal weather system in the frigid landscape of your bedchamber. This isn't just a bit nippy. This is the kind of cold that makes you question all your life choices that led you to be awake in an unheated room in the 19th century. Resolutely, or perhaps with the slow, shuffling gait of a man resigned to his fate. You make your way to the washstand. This is the nerve center of your morning ablutions, a rather grand piece of furniture, likely with a marble top that is currently radiating a coldness all its own. So cold. In fact, you could probably use it to chill champagne, if champagne for breakfast were your style, and if you didn't mind it freezing solid. Upon it sits a heavy ceramic pitcher, patterned with roses or some suitably pastoral scene, and a matching large basin. There's a soap dish holding a bar of something vaguely medicinal smelling, perhaps carbolic, or a block of Pear's transparent soap if you're feeling fancy, and a folded towel that looks like it could exfoliate a rhinoceros. If your valet was efficient, a smaller metal jug or can of hot water might have been placed beside it earlier, but its contents, by now, are likely lukewarm at best. A fleeting promise of comfort. You pour water from the large pitcher into the basin. It's cold. Not just cool, but genuinely, shockingly cold. The kind of water that feels like it was siphoned directly from an Arctic stream. If you do have that can of hot water, you might add it now, creating a brief, swirling eddy of slightly less frigid water that quickly succumbs to the overall chill. This is your spa experience for the day, a truly bracing immersion therapy session. You cup your hands, take a deep breath as if preparing for a dive, and splash the water onto your face. It's a gasp-inducing moment, a full frontal assault on any lingering drowsiness. The soap, when applied, lathers modestly, its scent sharp and clean. This ritual, this daily scrubbing of face and hands, is essential. Personal hygiene standards were certainly evolving in the Victorian era, and while daily full immersion baths weren't necessarily the norm for everyone, especially with the effort involved in hauling and heating water, the washstand served for these vital daily ablutions. Hot running water, you see, was a magnificent luxury largely confined to the realms of fantasy or the ultra-wealthy. Now, for the truly dedicated gentleman, or perhaps one particularly keen on the invigorating properties of cold. There's the hip bath. This metallic tub, shaped somewhat like a large, enclosed armchair, might have been placed by the now dormant fireplace by your servant. It's not filled to the brim for a leisurely soak. That's a different, more time-consuming affair. For the morning, it's a shallow pool of that same bracingly cold water, just enough to sit in and perform a swift, efficient, and utterly shocking all-over splash. You lower yourself into it with extreme caution, the cold metal sending shivers through you even before the water makes contact. The subsequent splash and dash is a testament to human endurance, or perhaps a deep-seated belief that if it's this unpleasant, it must be doing you some good. It's less a bath and more a controlled, personal flash flood designed to wake every single nerve ending in your body. Having braved the icy waters of both basin and hip bath, you reach for the towel. It's as substantial as a small carpet and possesses a texture that could likely strip paint. A friendly loofah made of something akin to high-grit sandpaper. You rub yourself down vigorously, the friction generating a fleeting, welcome warmth. This brisk toweling was, for some Victorians, almost a cleaning method in itself. Indeed. A quirky tidbit from the era reveals that some health advocates promoted dry friction baths, using rough towels or special flesh brushes, believing this stimulated circulation and cleansed the skin more effectively and healthily than excessive exposure to water, especially during the colder months. Perhaps they were just trying to rationalize a deep-seated aversion to freezing their britches off every morning. You stand now, skin tingling, goosebumps probably still rioting across your flesh, but technically cleaner. The air in the room, however, remains just as cold, and your damp skin makes it feel even more penetrating. Social historians debate the extent to which varying degrees of personal cleanliness among Victorian gentlemen correlated with social class. Available domestic technology, or individual adherence to emerging hygiene theories. Was your elaborate, multi-stage cold water ritual a mark of your high standards, or simply your personal daily penance? Whatever the interpretation, you've survived the first major hurdle of the morning's preparations, armed with nothing but a stiff upper lip and a bar of soap. The day is young, and there are many more layers of clothing yet to conquer. Having survived the glacial shock of your morning ablutions, that invigorating experience from Section 2, you are now, at least technically, clean. Your skin still hums with the memory of the cold, and goose flesh might still be prickling under your nightshirt, or perhaps the slightly more substantial shield of a thick woolen dressing gown you've hastily donned. But there's no time to luxuriate in this state of damp, shivering readiness. The next crucial and arguably most perilous stage of your morning ritual awaits the shave. This isn't a quick buzz with an electric gadget. This is the high art and daily gamble of the straight razor. You move towards your dressing table, or perhaps a dedicated shaving stand if your chambers are so equipped. Here, your instruments are laid out with an almost surgical precision. There's the star of the show, the straight razor itself, gleaming wickedly under the dim morning light, its edge honed to a terrifying sharpness. Beside it lies its faithful companion, the leather strop, essential for maintaining that keen edge. A silver or ceramic mug or scuttle holds your shaving soap or cream, and a fine badger hairbrush stands ready to whip it into a frenzy. A mirror, perhaps a small, adjustable one on a stand, or integrated into the dressing table, offers you a slightly distorted, bleary-eyed reflection of your own determined face. And then there's that small can of hot water, its precious warmth now more valuable than gold, which your valet, if you have one and he's been particularly attentive, delivered what feels like an eternity ago. It's likely not piping hot anymore, but any warmth is a blessing. First, the ritual of the strop. You hang one end of the leather strap from a hook, or hold it taut, and with practiced flowing strokes, you draw the razor's blade along its surface, edge leading on the linen side if your strop has one, for initial alignment, and then spine leading on the leather side. A rhythmic hiss, hiss, hiss that is one of the quintessential soundscapes of the Victorian gentleman's morning. This isn't just for show. It realigns and polishes the microscopic teeth of the razor's edge, ensuring it's as sharp as humanly possible. This daily caress of steel on leather is a meditative act, a moment of focus before you engage in what is essentially a controlled act of facial jeopardy. It's less a grooming preparation and more a personal pre-battle ceremony. Next, the lather. You dip the badger hairbrush into the now lukewarm to tepid water, shake off the excess, and then begin to work it into the shaving soap. Round and round the brush goes, transforming the hard cake into a thick, creamy, fragrant lather. The quality of this lather is paramount. Too thin, and it offers no protection. Too thick, and it clogs the blade. You aim for a consistency that is both cushioning and lubricating. Then you apply it to your face, painting your jawline, chin, and upper lip until you resemble a slightly unhinged Arctic explorer, or perhaps a rather stern Father Christmas with serious intent. The sensation of the warm-ish lather on your cold skin is momentarily pleasant, a brief truce before the main event. And now, the moment of truth. You take the straight razor, its handle perhaps made of polished wood, bone, or even something more exotic like ivory or mother of pearl if you're a man of means gripped firmly but delicately. This is where skill, patience, and an incredibly steady hand are not just an advantage, but a necessity. It's a well-known historical fact that shaving with a straight razor was a daily ritual for many Victorian gentlemen. While barbershops flourished, providing professional shaves, the art of self-shaving was also widespread. Passed down or painstakingly learned. Each stroke is a calculated risk. You stretch the skin taut with your free hand and holding the blade at the correct angle too steep, and you'll dig in. Too shallow, and it won't cut. You begin to draw it gently but firmly across your skin, against the grain, or with it depending on your preference and the toughness of your beard. Scrape, wipe, rinse the blade in the basin of now soapy water. Section by section, you navigate the contours of your face, the curve of your jaw, the tricky area under your nose, the sensitive skin of your neck. A moment's inattention, a sudden sneeze, or an unexpected tremor, and you'll be redecorating your face with little crimson tributaries. Some gentlemen, of course, might have collected these razors. Ornate examples with intricately carved handles or blades of the finest Sheffield steel were not uncommon, turning this daily tool into a prized possession or a subtle display of status. It's a quirky thought that such a utilitarian object, capable of inflicting minor injury, could also be a thing of beauty and pride. After what seems like an age of intense concentration, the task is complete. You run your fingers over your skin, hopefully smooth, hopefully largely intact. Any remaining lather is wiped away, and you might splash your face with the now decidedly cold water from your wash basin to close the pores. A final bracing shock, perhaps a touch of bay rum or some other simple, alcohol-based astringent is applied. A stinging but clean finish. Historians and collectors still debate the precise timeline and social diffusion of the safety razor's adoption. Though invented by the latter part of your era, its widespread displacement of the traditional straight razor took time and varied among different demographics well into the early 20th century. For now, in your particular morning, the classic cutthroat reigns supreme. You examine your reflection. A clean-shaven face stares back, a testament to your morning's fortitude. If you've managed to avoid any nicks or cuts, you might permit yourself a small, internal sigh of relief. It's a minor miracle, really worthy of a quiet moment of self-congratulation before the next sartorial challenge presents itself. The razor's edge has been successfully navigated for another day. Your face, now commendably smooth and free from the previous day's stubble. Thanks to that rather daring performance with the straight razor we just navigated in Section 3, feels decidedly alert? Perhaps a little too alert, if any stray nicks are still making their presence known with a faint sting. But the grooming of the manly visage is not yet complete. Having addressed the exterior foliage, it's time to turn your attention to the interior, specifically your teeth. In an era before fluoride toothpaste and convenient squeeze tubes, this process is naturally its own little adventure in abrasion and hope. You turn back to the washstand, that multi-purpose station of morning purification, still radiating its signature marble chill from Section 2. Or perhaps your dressing table holds a dedicated set for this next operation. Your tools are few but formidable. First, the toothbrush. This is not the sleek, ergonomically designed marvel of modern dentistry. Yours is likely a rather more robust affair, with a handle crafted from bone, or perhaps ivory if you're a gentleman of particular means, and bristles made from boar hair, stiff, unyielding, and about as forgiving on the gums as a startled hedgehog. These bristles are diligently, one hopes, cleaned between uses, but they are a far cry from the soft, nylon filaments of today. Then there is the tooth powder. This doesn't come in a tube, it's presented in a small ceramic pot, a tin, or perhaps a glass jar. You unscrew the lid or pry it open, revealing a fine, dusty substance. The ingredients of Victorian tooth powders were a fascinating, and sometimes alarming, concoction. Common components included powdered chalk, salt, finely ground cuttlefish bone for a bit of gentle abrasion. Or so the theory went, and perhaps a touch of pulverized charcoal, believed to have whitening properties. To make the experience slightly less like scrubbing your teeth with fine gravel, and to address the ever-present concern of sweet breath, various herbs and spices might be added, powdered myrrh for its antiseptic qualities, sage, or a dash of mint or cloves to lend a more palatable, if somewhat medicinal, flavor. Many gentlemen or their housekeepers might even have their own recipes for tooth powder, a closely guarded secret blend. You take your toothbrush, likely dampen the bristles slightly in the ever-present cold water from your pitcher, and then dip it into the pot of powder. A small, dusty cloud might arise. The aim is to get a decent coating of the powder onto the bristles. Then, the brushing itself begins. This is a vigorous, determined affair. You scrub away with earnest resolve, the abrasive powder working against the surfaces of your teeth. The sensation is gritty. The taste a curious blend of chalk, faint botanicals, and perhaps a hint of something vaguely soapy if your powder contains any saponaceous elements like powdered soap bark. It's certainly a more textural experience than modern toothpaste. You work your way around your mouth, up and down, back and forth, with the kind of enthusiasm that suggests you're trying to polish a set of antique marbles rather than gently cleanse delicate enamel. After a minute or two of this enthusiastic scouring, it's time to rinse. You take a mouthful of water from the glass or cup beside your basin. Yes, that same bracingly cold water. Swish it around to gather up the powdery residue, and then discreetly or perhaps not so discreetly, depending on your personal style, spit into the slop pail that lurks beneath or beside the washstand for just such eventualities. A second rinse might be necessary to remove all traces of the gritty powder. You run your tongue over your teeth. They feel cleaner, certainly smoother. Whether they are truly hygienically clean by modern standards is another matter. It's a well-documented historical fact that while Victorian dental hygiene was indeed on an upward trend, with toothbrushes and various powders becoming more commonplace among the burgeoning middle and upper classes, comprehensive dental knowledge was still quite limited. Tooth decay, gum ailments, and eventual tooth loss were unfortunately widespread. Dentists of the era were more often associated with the dreaded extraction than with preventative care or subtle restorations. The quirky, and sometimes alarming, side of Victorian dental care lay in some of the more extreme ingredients found in certain tooth powders. While chalk and cuttlefish were common, some concoctions featured genuinely harmful substances like brick dust for extra grit, or even acidic components that might temporarily whiten but would ultimately erode enamel. There were also soot-based powders, utilizing finely sifted chimney soot, which, rather ironically, was believed to make teeth whiter and brighter. One can only imagine the taste. Smiling too widely in the Victorian era, given these realities, was perhaps a brave gamble against the prevailing dental odds. Dental historians continue to analyze the actual efficacy versus the potential long-term detriments of common Victorian tooth powder ingredients, particularly the delicate balance they attempted to strike between abrasive cleaning power, which could remove surface stains, and the inevitable wear and tear on precious tooth enamel. You, however, are blissfully unaware of these future debates. You've done your duty by your dental apparatus as best as 19th century science and tradition dictate. Your breath is hopefully fresher, your teeth feel polished, and you've added another layer to your increasingly elaborate morning armor. The cold room still nips at any exposed skin, but you are making progress, one painstaking powdered step at a time. Having addressed your dental fortifications with the gritty determination characteristic of your era as we explored in Section 4, your attention now ascends to what might be considered the true crowning glory of the Victorian gentleman, his hair. And let us not forget the almost obligatory accompaniment of meticulously sculpted facial hair. After the trials of the cold, the razor, and the tooth powder, this stage might seem almost artistic, a chance to sculpt and tame, to bring order to the chaotic thatch that currently adorns your head after a night pressed against a pillow. You are still, of course, in that refreshingly cool bedchamber, likely positioned before your dressing table mirror, which reflects your earnest, concentrated expression. Your arsenal for this particular battle is impressive, a testament to the importance placed on a well-groomed pate. An array of brushes confronts you, not just one, but several, their backs often crafted from polished wood, silver, or ivory, their bristles of varying stiffness, usually natural, like boar. There are combs, too, fine-toothed and broad, perhaps carved from tortoiseshell or horn. And then there are the potions small, often ornate pots and bottles containing the vital unguents of the day. Most famous amongst these is Macassar oil, this legendary elixir, typically based on coconut or palm oil and often exotically scented with ylang-ylang, pasamana, rose, or other floral notes, was the Victorian gentleman's best friend for achieving that desirable sleekness, conditioning the hair, and imparting a fashionable sheen. It was so ubiquitous, in fact, that it led directly to the invention of the antimacassar, those little bits of cloth draped over the backs of chairs and sofas to protect the upholstery from gentlemen's well-oiled heads. You wouldn't want to leave a greasy mark on Aunt Mildred's prize settee. After all, that would be a social catastrophe almost as dire as a poorly tied cravat. Alongside the Macassar oil, there might be various pomades or waxes. These were heavier styling agents, historically sometimes made with rendered animal fats like bear grease, though by your late Victorian period. Beeswax and lanolin were more common bases, and scented with fragrant essential oils. These were crucial for maintaining a neat parting, sculpting impressive mustaches, or keeping unruly sideburns in check. The very air around your dressing table is probably already subtly perfumed with the concoction you favored yesterday. The first step is a thorough, almost aggressive, brushing. This isn't a gentle detangle, this is a serious business. 100 strokes a day was a common recommendation, not just to smooth the hair, but also to distribute oils, stimulate the scalp supposedly promoting growth, and to remove any dust, lint, or residue from previously applied products. It's a surprisingly effective upper body workout, this relentless rhythmic grooming. You brush with vigor, your arm working like a well-oiled piston, until your scalp tingles and your hair begins to show some semblance of order. Once the initial taming by brush is complete, it's time for product. You might take a small amount of Macassar oil on your fingertips, warming it slightly before working it through your hair from root to tip. Not too much. Mind you, the aim is a healthy luster, not the appearance of having taken a dive into a vat of cooking oil. Though, some gentlemen did tend towards a rather more generous application, making their heads so slick they might indeed risk sliding off their pillows if they weren't careful. If a more structured style is desired, or if your mustache requires architectural support. A dab of pomade is selected, warmed between the palms, and then meticulously applied. Now, the styling proper. A parting must be achieved, dead center or to the side, depending on the prevailing fashion and your personal preference. A fine-toothed comb is employed to draw this line with geometric precision. The hair is then smoothed down, perhaps coaxed into a gentle wave over the forehead or temple if your hair has a natural inclination, for truly unruly locks or for achieving more sculpted styles. Heated curling tongs or mustache irons might even be employed by your valet, though this adds another layer of complexity and potential for minor burns to your already elaborate routine. It's a well-established historical fact that men's hairstyles in the Victorian era, while varying over the decades, often involved neatly parted hair, sometimes with carefully arranged waves or curls, and facial hair, mustaches, mutton chop sideburns, full beard spot was not just popular, it was practically a declaration of masculinity and status, groomed with immense care and attention. If you sport a mustache, as so many of your contemporaries do, it receives its own dedicated ritual, combed, trimmed with tiny, sharp scissors, and then often waxed and twisted into elegant points, or a distinguished curve using a stronger pomade or dedicated mustache wax. This could be a time-consuming process in itself, a miniature topiary session conducted right under your nose. Sideburns, too, are combed and shaped, ensuring they are symmetrical and flattering to your face. It's a curious aspect of the era that while some of these products were genuinely beneficial for conditioning, many dubious concoctions were also heavily advertised, promising to prevent baldness, restore lost hair, or even change its color, often containing wildly ineffective or downright bizarre ingredients. You might have seen advertisements for electric hairbrushes that supposedly used mild galvanic currents to stimulate hair follicles, promising results so miraculous they sounded like they could regrow hair on a billiard ball. The Victorian gentleman was certainly no stranger to the optimistic marketing of cosmetic aids. Fashion historians and material culture specialists still discuss the extent to which the elaborate grooming of men's hair and facial hair in the Victorian era reflected deeply held ideals of masculinity and respectability, proclaimed one's social status, or was increasingly driven by a burgeoning consumer culture fueled by persuasive advertising for these myriad oils, creams, and styling devices. For you, however, sitting here in the still cool air of your room, it's simply a necessary part of becoming you for the day, presentable, polished, and appropriately coiffed. The scent of bergamot, sandalwood, or perhaps a hint of rose from your chosen hair. Dressing now subtly perfumes the air around you, a fragrant badge of your morning's diligent efforts. Your coiffure now immaculately sculpted, your mustache, if you sport one, a testament to precision engineering, and your breath reasonably fresh. All thanks to the efforts of Section 5 and Section 4 respectively. You are ready to embark upon the foundational stage of becoming a fully attired Victorian gentleman. This means layers, many, many layers. You are still, of course, enduring the ambient chill of your bedchamber, that persistent companion from Section 1, clad perhaps in your dressing gown over your nightshirt. But these will soon be shed in favor of the complex architecture of proper underpinnings. This isn't just a quick t-shirt and boxer scenario. This is a structured approach to underdressing that speaks of propriety, hygiene, and a certain acceptance of being somewhat encumbered. First, you divest yourself of the nightshirt, that voluminous cotton or linen garment that served you through the night. Its replacement is, well, another voluminous cotton or linen garment, though this one is designated for day wear. This is your shirt, but not the fancy visible outer shirt that will later sport a starched collar and cuffs. No, this is the main body linen, a long garment, often reaching down to your knees or mid-thigh, with long sleeves. Think of it as a very respectable, slightly more tailored nightgown that you wear all day under everything else. Its primary functions are to absorb perspiration, protect your more expensive outer clothes from direct contact with your skin and body oils, and provide a rudimentary layer of mostly psychological warmth. You pull it on over your head, the clean, perhaps slightly crisp linen or fine cotton feeling cool against your skin. It's likely white or off-white, the standard for such items, easily boiled for laundering. Next come the drawers. These are not the brief, stretchy items of modern parlance. Victorian gentlemen's drawers are substantial undertrousers, typically made of linen or cotton for year-round wear, or perhaps flannel or even fine wool for the colder months, a sensible choice given the prevailing temperature of your current environment. They are long, often reaching the calf or ankle, and feature a rather complicated array of buttons, usually at the waistband and sometimes at the ankles, or perhaps a drawstring tie to secure them. Pulling these on and ensuring they sit correctly, smooth, untwisted, and with all fastenings properly addressed, is an intimate form of morning calisthenics. You don't want any uncomfortable bunching or riding up under the subsequent layers. That would be a source of constant, ungentlemanly irritation throughout the day. It's a well-established historical fact that Victorian undergarments for men were indeed layered and primarily functional, designed for hygiene as they were laundered more frequently than outerwear, and to protect more costly woolen suits. If the weather is particularly bitter, or if you are of a more delicate constitution, you might add another layer here, an undervest or singlet, possibly made of wool or a wool-cotton blend for extra warmth. Some gentlemen even favored the union suit, an all-in-one knitted undergarment that combined drawers and vest, buttoning up the front, the epitome of cozy, if somewhat cumbersome. Coverage. You are, by this point, starting to feel a bit like a well-wrapped, slightly perplexed parcel, but warmth and propriety demand these sartorial sacrifices. The quality of these underlinens, the fineness of the linen, the softness of the cotton, the neatness of the seams, the quality of the bone or mother-of-pearl buttons, would subtly indicate your status, even though they are mostly unseen by the outside world. Your valet, should you employ such a gentleman's gentleman, would have ensured these items were laid out for you. Aired and warmed if you are particularly fortunate, though, warming under M&S in an unheated room is a challenge even for the most dedicated servant. While a valet's assistance would be indispensable for the more complex outer garments, these initial layers are often managed by oneself. There were, of course, various theories and even movements concerning undergarments in your era. A quirky tidbit for you, Dr. Gustav Jaeger, a German professor, promoted his sanitary woolen system in the latter part of the 19th century, advocating for clothing made exclusively of animal fibers like wool, worn next to the skin. He believed wool allowed the skin to breathe properly and had inherent health benefits, moving away from the traditional reliance on linen and cotton for underthings. His ideas gained a certain following among those concerned with health and dress reform. Whether your own drawers are Jaeger-approved wool or traditional linen, their primary job is to keep you decent and provide a barrier. Clothing historians continue to explore the nuances of how Victorian men of different social strata balanced comfort, a relative term. One imagines practicality and the prevailing ideals of propriety and cleanliness in their choice and wearing of underlinens. Was it purely about function, or did fashion and a certain unspoken code dictate the cut and quantity of these hidden layers? For you, in this moment, it's simply the accepted, non-negotiable first stage of becoming dressed. Each button fastened, each tie secured, is a step closer to facing the world, or at least facing the next set of even more elaborate garments waiting in your wardrobe. The air might still be frigid, but you are now doubly encased, a man of linen and resolve. With your foundational layers of linen now securely in place, a veritable fortress against the chill, as established in Section 6, you stand ready to confront one of the most iconic and, frankly, intimidating aspects of Victorian male attire, the neckwear. This isn't merely a decorative flourish, it's a rigid declaration of your status, your respectability, and your willingness to endure a certain level of discomfort in the name of sartorial propriety. The chill of the room, though still present, is perhaps slightly less noticeable as you begin to build up your sartorial defenses. But the challenge ahead requires a cool head in every sense. First, the collar. This is not an integral part of your main shirt. Oh no, that would be far too simple and require too frequent laundering of the entire garment. Instead, you are faced with a detachable collar, a marvel of starched linen or cotton, stiffened to an almost architectural rigidity. These collars came in a dazzling array of styles, each with its own subtle connotations of formality and fashion. The upright Gladstone, the classic points of a wing collar essential for evening wear but also seen in daytime, the simple stand-up band, or the slightly more forgiving turnover collar. Today, for your daytime engagements, perhaps you've selected a moderately high stand-up collar, one that will lend an air of dignified authority. It feels less like an item of clothing and more like a carefully engineered support structure for your head. It's a well-documented historical fact that detachable collars and cuffs, made of heavily starched linen, were a hallmark of Victorian and Edwardian men's fashion. They offered a practical means of maintaining a crisp, clean appearance at the neck and wrists, the most visible parts of the shirt, without the need to launder the entire shirt body daily. Attaching this marvel of laundry technology to the simple neckband of your undershirt is where the wrestling truly begins. This is achieved with collar studs, small, often mother-of-pearl or brass fasteners, one for the back of the neckband and one for the front. These studs are tiny, malicious demons disguised as functional items. You must align the corresponding buttonholes on the shirt neckband and the stiff collar, a task made more difficult by the collar's unwillingness to bend to your will, and then coax the stud through the layers. The back one is often particularly fiendish, requiring a certain amount of blind fumbling. Your fingers, perhaps still a little stiff from the room's cold, grapple with the unyielding fabric and the elusive studs. A muttered curse, swiftly stifled, might not be entirely out of place. Once attached, the collar stands proud and unyielding, a white rampart around your throat, giving you the distinct posture of a startled giraffe, but hopefully with an added measure of dignity. With the collar finally subdued and locked in place, your attention turns to the cravat or necktie. This is where a gentleman could express a modicum of personal taste, though always within the bounds of decorum. Your cravat might be made of silk, perhaps a rich, dark satin, a subtly patterned brocade, or even a fine wool for a more textured look in cooler weather. The colors, while generally conservative for daytime, could range from deep blues, greens, and burgundies to more sober grays and blacks, sometimes enlivened with a discrete pattern like polka dots, stripes, or a small repeating motif. The art of tying the cravat is a skill honed through practice, patience, and perhaps no small amount of exasperation. There were numerous accepted styles, the classic four-in-hand knot, various forms of bow ties, though these were often more formal or reserved for evening, the ascot, or more elaborate, voluminous knots that harked back to earlier Regency styles. Whichever you choose, achieving the perfect tension, the correct drape, and a neat, symmetrical knot is paramount. You stand before your mirror, cravat ends dangling, and begin the intricate dance of loops and tucks. Too loose, and you look slovenly. Too tight, and you risk slow asphyxiation by silk. The first attempt might be a dismal failure, a crumpled mess that requires a deep breath and a fresh start. Tying a cravat perfectly on the first try is a rare achievement, possibly a sign of an impending lottery win or some other form of divine favor. Your valet, if you are fortunate enough to retain one, would be a master of this art, able to conjure a perfect knot in moments, but for many gentlemen, it was a daily, personal challenge. Some gentlemen even kept special boxes or collar-shaping machines, quirky little contraptions designed to help maintain the precise curve and stiffness of their collars when not being worn, ensuring they were always ready for action. The collar and cravat together were far more than just clothing. They were signifiers. A clean, perfectly starched collar and a neatly tied cravat spoke volumes about your attention to detail, your social standing, and your adherence to the strict codes of gentlemanly presentation. It was the visible representation of your self-discipline. Dress historians continue to examine the interplay between the perceived symbolism of such starched neckwear, representing that discipline, inherent cleanliness, and established social standing, and the actual physical discomfort experienced by the Victorian men who were obliged to wear these often quite restrictive items on a daily basis. For you, however, as you give a final, critical tug to your cravat, settling it just so beneath your chin, the primary feeling is one of accomplishment. Your neck may feel somewhat encased, your head held at a rather fixed and formal angle, but you are one significant step closer to being ready to face the world with the requisite degree of Victorian aplomb. Your neck now encased in its starched rampart and adorned with a perfectly executed cravat, a triumph of will and dexterity. As achieved in Section 7, you are truly ready to assemble the main edifice of your daily attire. The preliminary layers of linen have provided the foundation. Now come the woolens. The garments that will present you to the world as a gentleman of substance and standing. The air in your room, while still possessing that distinct morning coolness, is gradually being kept at bay by the increasing layers of your clothing. You move from the dressing table towards your wardrobe, or perhaps your valet has already laid out the chosen ensemble. First, the waistcoat, or vest as it might also be called. This is no mere accessory, it is an integral component of the Victorian gentleman's silhouette. It provides an additional layer of warmth, a touch of sartorial dash, and, crucially, a home for your pocket watch and chain. Today, you might select a waistcoat of fine wool, perhaps matching the suit you intend to wear, or maybe a subtly contrasting one in a muted check or a rich, dark brocade if the occasion allows for a little more individuality. The back of the waistcoat is often made from a smoother, lighter material like polished cotton or silk, as it will be hidden beneath your jacket. A practical concession to comfort and cost, it could be single-breasted, with a neat row of 5 or 6 buttons, or perhaps double-breasted for a more imposing look. You slip your arms through the openings, settling it over your freshly laundered and meticulously arranged shirt. Buttoning it up requires care, ensuring each button aligns perfectly and the garment lies smooth and unwrinkled. It should fit snugly but not tightly, allowing for ease of movement while maintaining a trim line. This distinguished layer also conveniently smooths out any character lines that your generously cut undershirt might otherwise betray. Next, you turn your attention to the trousers. These are not the casual, low-slung garments of a later era. Victorian trousers are typically crafted from sturdy wool, serge, tweed, or a fine worsted, and are cut with a significantly higher waist than you might be accustomed to. This is because they are not designed to be held up by a belt, but rather by braces, or suspenders as they are also known. You step into them, pulling them up over your long underdrawers. The feel of the wool is substantial, conveying a sense of durability and warmth, almost as comforting as wearing a pair of very well-behaved, neatly pressed sheep. They might be pleated at the front, or feature a smooth, flat front, and by this period, a discernible crease down the leg is becoming increasingly fashionable. A sharp line of intention. With the trousers pulled up, it's time for the braces. These are essential. Without them, your high-waisted trousers would soon be making an undignified descent. Your braces might be of sturdy elastic, woven fabric, or fine leather, with leather button tabs at each end. These tabs correspond with a series of buttons sewn discreetly along the inside or sometimes outside of your trouser waistband, typically 2 at each side of the front and 2 at the back. You loop the braces over your shoulders, ensuring they lie flat and untwisted, and then proceed to button the tabs onto the trousers. This requires a little reaching and perhaps a slight contortion, especially for the back buttons. Once attached, you adjust the length of the braces using the metal buckles or slides. This is where the precision comes in. They need to be tight enough to hold the trousers at the correct height, allowing the fabric to drape properly, but not so tight that they dig into your shoulders or create an unintended wedgie. It's a delicate balancing act between comfortably supported and accidental human slingshot. It's a well-established historical fact that the three-piece suit, comprising jacket, waistcoat, and trousers, often of matching fabric, the lounge suit for less formal day wear, or more structured morning coats and frock coats for business and formal occasions, was becoming the standard uniform for gentlemen. And within this ensemble, trousers were invariably worn high and impeccably supported by braces. Some gentlemen's braces were surprisingly decorative, even if mostly unseen. It's a quirky little tidbit that braces could be found with elaborately embroidered patterns, perhaps with floral motifs, sporting scenes, or even personalized initials, making them a hidden canvas for a touch of individuality or a sentimental gift from a loved one. You glance in the mirror. If one is conveniently tall enough, the waistcoat sits smoothly, the trousers hang correctly, their crease if present sharp. You are beginning to look like a figure of authority and order. The combination of the starched collar from Section 7, the snug waistcoat, and the firmly braced trousers creates a very particular posture, an uprightness that is both physical and symbolic. Fashion historians often debate the speed and regional variations with which the more loungy and slightly less structured sack suit began to supplant the older, more formal frock coat and morning coat for everyday business and professional wear among Victorian gentlemen during the latter half of the century. But whatever the specific cut of your outer jacket will be, this underlying structure of waistcoat, woolen trousers, and braces is fundamental. Each layer, each button, each precisely adjusted strap contributes to the meticulously constructed image of the Victorian gentleman, ready and equipped for the day ahead. The main architecture of your attire, the meticulously layered underlinens, the precisely fitted waistcoat, and the impeccably braced woolen trousers as assembled in Section 8, now provides a formidable sense of being properly constructed. You are almost a complete gentleman, but a crucial element, one that quite literally grounds your entire appearance, is yet to be addressed: your footwear. And in the Victorian era, a gentleman's boots were not merely functional, they were a statement, a testament to his attention to detail, his cleanliness, and his social standing. To be seen with scuffed or ill-kept boots was simply unthinkable. Before the boots themselves can be donned, however, there's the matter of hosiery. You select a pair of socks, perhaps of fine dark wool for warmth, silk for a touch of luxury if the occasion warrants, or sturdy cotton. They are likely dark, black, deep navy, or gray, to be unobtrusive. You pull them on carefully, ensuring they are smooth against your skin, with no uncomfortable wrinkles or bunches that could cause irritation once confined within the unforgiving leather of your boots. This small step, often overlooked, is vital for comfort throughout the day. Now, the boots. These are likely ankle boots, the common style for a gentleman's day wear. They might be button boots, requiring a button hook for their numerous fastenings. Elastic-sided, the precursor to the Chelsea boot, wonderfully convenient, or lace-ups, hey, whatever the style. They have, one fervently hopes, been subjected to the rigorous ritual of blacking and polishing. This task might well have been performed by your valet or another member of the household staff, perhaps even a dedicated boot boy if your establishment is grand enough. However, whether you perform the task yourself or meticulously inspect the work of others, you are intimately familiar with the dedication required to achieve that requisite mirror shine. It's a matter of pride. The process is an art form. First, the boots would have been thoroughly cleaned of any mud, dust, or residue from their previous outing, using stiff brushes to dislodge every particle. Then comes the application of the blacking itself. This was typically a waxy or pasty concoction, often containing ingredients like lampblack for pigment, beeswax, tallow, and sometimes even surprising additions like sugar or molasses, which were believed to contribute to a higher gloss. Famous brands like Day & Martin were ubiquitous, their tins a familiar sight. The blacking is applied with a dauber or cloth, worked evenly into every crevice and surface of the leather, nourishing it and imparting that deep, rich blackness. Once the blacking has been applied and perhaps allowed to dry slightly, the real work begins: the brushing. This is no gentle wipe down. A series of horsehair brushes, from coarser to finer, are employed with vigorous, energetic strokes. This action warms the waxes in the blacking, works the polish into the leather, and begins to raise the shine. It's the kind of repetitive, forceful activity that makes you appreciate why it was often a dedicated job. This is the only gym membership a Victorian gentleman, or at least his boot boy, truly needed. The rhythmic whisk, whisk, whisk of the brush against leather is a sound synonymous with a well-kept household. Finally, for that ultimate dazzling mirror finish, comes the buffing. This is done with a very soft brush, a velvet cloth, or a chamois leather. Quick, light strokes bring the surface to an almost liquid gleam. Some particularly dedicated individuals might even employ a technique involving a tiny bit of moisture, a discreet spit shine, though perhaps considered a tad unrefined for a gentleman to perform himself. To achieve an even deeper, more reflective polish, the goal is a surface so glossy you could almost check your cravat in it, a shine so bright you could use your boots to signal ships in a pinch, or at least impress a passing acquaintance with your impeccable turnout. It's a well-established historical fact that boot blacking was a common trade, and achieving a high shine on leather footwear was a laborious but expected part of a gentleman's or his servant's daily routine, reflecting his character and status. Now, you must actually put on these gleaming paragons of podiatric perfection. If they are tight-fitting, as fashionable boots often were, this can be a minor struggle in itself. Button boots will require the use of a button hook, a slender metal tool with a hook at one end, to painstakingly loop each tiny button through its corresponding hole. A fiddly and time-consuming task? Taller boots might necessitate boot pulls, sturdy hooks that slip into loops sewn inside the boot shafts, allowing you to haul them on with considerable effort. It can sometimes feel like you're trying to coax an angry badger into a very small, unyielding hole. A quirky aspect of this obsession with polished leather is that some boot-blacking concoctions had rather potent and lingering odors, a mix of chemicals, waxes, and sometimes even more organic ingredients, which would subtly announce your well-maintained presence. Social historians and material culture experts sometimes discuss whether the extreme emphasis on highly polished boots for Victorian gentlemen was more a reflection of aspirational class identity, the lingering influence of military precision bleeding into civilian life, or perhaps an early triumph of consumer branding by the burgeoning Polish manufacturers of the day. For you, however, standing there, your feet now encased in these impeccably shining leather masterpieces, the primary feeling is one of completion and correctness. Your foundation is secure, your presentation flawless from the ground up. You stand now, a formidable figure encased in layers of linen, wool, and impeccably polished leather from Section 9. Your boots gleam with a devotion that speaks volumes. Your trousers hang with precision. Your waistcoat is buttoned just so, and your neckwear is a triumph of starched artistry. You are, for all intents and purposes, dressed. But the transformation from merely clothed to truly attired in the grand Victorian gentlemanly tradition lies in the application of the finer flourishes, those small yet profoundly significant details that whisper of refinement, status, and meticulous attention to personal presentation. First, a subtle hint of scent. In an era preceding aggressive aerosol deodorants, a touch of good quality cologne or toilet water was a mark of a fastidious gentleman. You approach your dressing table, where alongside the brushes and pomades from Section 5 there might reside a discreet glass bottle or two. Perhaps it's a classic eau de cologne, with its bright citrus and herbal notes, or a more traditional English lavender water, or even something with a hint of sandalwood or violet. The key is discretion. You aim for subtly intriguing, not ambulatory potpourri factory. A small amount is decanted, perhaps onto your fingertips to be lightly touched to the pulse points, or, more commonly, applied to a clean linen handkerchief that will later reside in your pocket. This subtle fragrance is not just about smelling pleasant, it's about conveying an aura of cleanliness and refined sensibility. Some of these toilet waters even had rather quirky, supposedly medicinal or invigorating properties advertised, promising to refresh the senses or clear the head. far beyond just making you smell like a well-tended garden. Next, an indispensable companion for any gentleman of standing the pocket watch. This is more than a mere time-telling device. It's a symbol of punctuality, responsibility, and often a significant investment or cherished heirloom. You retrieve it from its resting place, perhaps a velvet-lined box. It might be a handsome gold or silver hunter case, which springs open to reveal the face, or an open-faced design. Before it can be pocketed, it requires its daily ritual winding. You hold the watch, its cool metal a familiar weight in your hand, and carefully turn the winder. The tiny click's a quiet, satisfying sound. Like tending to a tiny, needy mechanical pet, you must faithfully feed each day with these precise revolutions. Once wound, you attach it to its chain, perhaps a distinguished Albert chain, which loops through a buttonhole of your waistcoat from section 8 and often features a decorative T-bar, with the watch nestled securely in one waistcoat pocket, and perhaps a decorative fob, a seal, or a cigar cutter dangling from the other end. Checking the time is now not just a glance at a wrist, but a deliberate, almost ceremonial act of retrieving this gleaming treasure. Attention then turns to the cuffs of your shirt. If you're wearing a shirt with double cuffs, or French cuffs, these now require fastening with cufflinks. These small articles of jewelry could range from simple, elegant mother-of-pearl or gold disc to more elaborate affairs featuring enamel, small gemstones or monograms. Fastening them through the stiff, starched buttonholes can be a fiddly business, a true test of dexterity, often best performed before one's fingers are completely numb from the room's lingering chill. That old friend from Section 1. Similarly, if your cravat style calls for it, a tie pin or stick pin is selected, perhaps a single pearl, a small cameo, or a neat gold bar, and precisely inserted to keep the silk folds perfectly in place, or simply to add another subtle point of interest. You might also wear a ring or two, likely a signet ring on your little finger, bearing your family crest or initials, a discreet but potent symbol of your lineage. Finally, the handkerchief. We've already mentioned its potential role as a carrier of scent, but its primary purpose is, of course, practical. A clean, neatly folded linen or fine cotton handkerchief, perhaps monogrammed, is an absolute necessity. It is tucked into a pocket, the breast pocket of your coat, once that is donned, or a trouser pocket for now. Its presence is reassuring, a mark of preparedness for any minor eventuality, from a sneeze to dabbing a perspiring brow, though one hopes not to perspire too noticeably. It's a well-established historical fact that Victorian gentlemen commonly used cologne, carried pocket watches on chains, and wore cufflinks and tie pins as essential accessories. These weren't just adornments. They were integral parts of the accepted masculine uniform, denoting status, attention to personal grooming, and an understanding of social propriety. Historians of material culture often debate the degree to which the selection and display of men's accessories like watches, cufflinks, and scents in the Victorian era were driven by practical necessity, overt status signaling to peers and inferiors, or more nuanced personal expressions of individual identity, carefully curated within the admittedly strict social conventions of the time. As you survey yourself now, these finer flourishes complete the picture. Each item, though small, adds to the overall impression of quiet elegance and meticulous care. You are not just dressed, you are armed with all the accoutrements of your station, ready to meet the day with confidence and impeccable style. With the last of the finer flourishes meticulously applied, your discreetly scented handkerchief neatly tucked away, your pocket watch diligently wound and secured, your cufflinks gleaming subtly at your wrists, all accomplished in Section 10. You are now, by all appearances, a fully assembled Victorian gentleman, at least in terms of your primary indoor attire. But the process is not quite complete. Before you can confidently stride forth, even to your own breakfast room, there is one final, crucial ritual, the mirror scrutiny. This is the moment of truth, the ultimate quality control check, where your entire morning's painstaking work is submitted for a critical, unblinking assessment. You move towards a full-length mirror, perhaps a handsome freestanding cheval glass in your dressing room, or a prominent fixture in your bedchamber. This isn't a casual, fleeting glance. This is a methodical inspection, a head-to-toe appraisal designed to ensure that every element of your presentation is absolutely impeccable. The mirror, in this instance, is your most honest and occasionally most brutal critic. Your gaze begins at the top. Is your hair, so diligently brushed and oiled in Section 5, still perfectly parted and smooth? Are your sideburns and mustache, if you sport them precisely as they should be? Has any errant speck of dust dared to settle upon your crowning glory? A quick, almost imperceptible adjustment might be made. Then, downwards. The shave from Section 3. Is your skin smooth, with no telltale signs of irritation too obvious? Next, the critical domain of your neckwear, that masterpiece of starch and silk from Section 7. Is the collar sitting correctly? Its stiff points perfectly aligned, not askew or uncomfortably digging into your neck. Is your cravat knot still immaculate, centered precisely, its folds draping just so, a slight tug here, a subtle repositioning there? Might be required. The slightest imperfection in this area could undermine the entire effect of dignified composure. Your eyes travel further down to your waistcoat, the linchpin of your torso attire from Section 8. Are all buttons correctly fastened, lying flat without any strain or buckling? Does your watch chain, that emblem of punctuality from Section 10, drape in its customary elegant curve across the front? Is there any unsightly bunching of the shirt beneath? You run a hand down your front, smoothing everything into place. Then, the trousers, also from Section 8. You assess their hang. Are they supported at the correct height by your braces? Breaking just so over your boots is the crease. If present, still sharp and defined. You might even turn slightly, checking the profile, ensuring there's no unseemly pulling or awkwardness in the fit. And finally, your gaze drops to your footwear, those gleaming sentinels from Section 9. Does the mirror-like shine remain unblemished? Are your trouser cuffs meeting the tops of your boots in that precise, approved fashion, with no awkward gap or unsightly bagging of sock? The reflection from those polished surfaces should be a source of quiet satisfaction. This meticulous review is not born of mere vanity, though a certain pride in one's appearance is, of course, understandable. It's rooted in the deep-seated Victorian belief that a gentleman's outward presentation was a direct reflection of his inner character, his discipline, his attention to detail, and his respect for social propriety. A sloppy appearance suggested a sloppy mind, or worse, a disregard for the sensibilities of others. The emphasis on a polished and meticulously correct appearance was paramount, and social standing was often subtly affirmed or subtly undermined by such details. Tailoring was an art, and clothes were expected not just to fit well, but to be maintained and worn with an air of effortless perfection. An effortlessness that, as you well know by now, involved a surprising amount of elaborate effort. Spotting a single stray hair, a speck of lint on your dark wool waistcoat, or a misaligned cravat could feel like a crisis of near-diplomatic proportions, requiring immediate corrective action. Some contemporary etiquette guides offered astonishingly detailed, almost obsessive-view advice on every conceivable aspect of a gentleman's dress and deportment, illustrating the seriousness with which these matters were taken. While you might not consciously consult such a guide each morning, its principles are ingrained. Social commentators and historians continue to explore the psychological impact on Victorian men of such rigorous daily scrutiny of their own appearance. Did it foster unwavering confidence, a persistent underlying anxiety about meeting exacting standards, or perhaps a highly performative sense of self, always conscious of being on display? For you, in this moment, as you make the final, tiny adjustments, a flick to remove an imaginary piece of lint, a subtle squaring of the shoulders, the feeling is hopefully one of quiet approval. The ensemble hangs correctly. The lines are clean. The details are pristine. You look, and therefore feel, entirely put together. So impeccable, in fact, that you half expect a round of spontaneous applause from the otherwise stoic bedroom furniture. You are now ready to face the next stage of your morning, confident that your appearance meets the exacting standards of your time, and, more importantly, your own. Having successfully navigated the meticulous self-scrutiny before the mirror, as we detailed in section 11 and confirmed that your presentation is indeed impeccable, a certain sense of readiness settles upon you. You are a walking, breathing embodiment of Victorian gentlemanly precision. However, before you proceed to the breakfast table and the day's first substantial nourishment, a small but significant ritual often intercedes a brief constitutional, a moment to take the air and survey your domain. However grand or modest that domain might be, after the prolonged period spent in the confines of your bedchamber and dressing room, surrounded by the accoutrements of your toilette, the lingering scent of soap, macassar oil, and perhaps a hint of that cologne from section 10, a breath of genuinely fresh air is a welcome prospect. What constitutes your domain for this pre-breakfast airing naturally depends on your circumstances. If you reside in a city townhouse, it might involve a turn in a small, walled garden at the rear of the property, a quiet patch of green offering a brief respite from the urban clamor. Or perhaps it's merely a stroll to the front door, open to greet the morning, allowing you to cast an appraising eye up and down the street, observing the early stirrings of city life, a milk cart rattling by, a housemaid scrubbing a neighboring stoop. You might even simply repair to a drawing room, throw open a tall sash window, and lean out to inhale the morning atmosphere. If, however, you are fortunate enough to be in a country house, your constitutional could be a more expansive, though still brief. A brisk walk along a graveled terrace overlooking the dew-kissed lawns, a circuit of the formal rose garden, or a moment spent on the portico, gazing out over your parkland. This is not yet the full-scale outdoor excursion that would require your hat, overcoat, and gloves. For this brief airing, you are likely still in your indoor suit, the one you so painstakingly assembled. It's less about vigorous exercise and more about a gentle transition, a clearing of the head, and a quiet assertion of your presence. You step out, or lean into the morning, and the air greets you. It might still be cool, perhaps carrying the dampness of early dew or the crispness of a clear dawn. The sounds are different here, the distant rumble of the city slowly awakening, or the chirping of sparrows and the rustle of leaves in a more rural setting. It's a welcome change from the heady aroma of your personal grooming products and the focused silence of your dressing room. The purpose of this little ritual is manifold. Physically, it offers a moment to stretch your legs after the somewhat static process of dressing, to fill your lungs with air that hasn't been filtered through heavy draperies. Mentally, it's a palate cleanser, a brief interlude to gather your thoughts, perhaps to mentally review the appointments or tasks that lie ahead in your day. And then there's the surveying your domain aspect. This is a subtle, almost unconscious act of proprietorship and stewardship. Your eye might critically assess the neatness of a path, the state of a flower bed, perhaps checking if the neighbor's cat has once again violated your prized petunias, or simply register the overall order and tidiness of your immediate surroundings. It's a quiet reaffirmation of your place in the world. It's a well-established historical fact that taking a morning constitutional, even a very brief one before breakfast, was a common practice for the Victorian gentry and aspiring middle classes. It was valued for its perceived health benefits. The Victorians were great believers in the restorative powers of fresh air, and as a moment of quiet reflection or oversight before the day truly began. Some keen health reformers of your era even advocated for specific breathing exercises to be performed during such airings, or in a more quirky vein. Air baths, which involved exposing the skin directly to fresh air, though this was likely a more private pursuit than something undertaken in your full suit on the front lawn. You take a few deep breaths. The air feels good, invigorating in a way that the artificial chill of your unheated bedroom perhaps wasn't. You might exchange a brief, polite nod with a gardener already at work, or another early rising member of your household staff. But this is primarily a solitary moment. Social historians often consider whether the Victorian gentleman's morning constitutional was primarily driven by emerging medical advice on the benefits of fresh air and gentle exercise, a lingering manifestation of more leisurely aristocratic habits trickling down through society, or a symbolic assertion of control and quiet observation over his household and immediate environment. After a few minutes of this gentle perambulation or quiet observation, you feel suitably refreshed and ready for the next stage. This brief journey is less a constitutional in the athletic sense and more a polite nod to the concept of exercise before the serious business of breakfast. With your lungs cleared and your perspective broadened ever so slightly by this brief encounter with the outside world, you turn back towards the house, your thoughts now likely drifting towards the enticing prospect of warm tea, toast, and the morning newspaper. Your brief constitutional completed as enjoyed in Section 12. Having taken in the morning air and cast an approving eye over your immediate domain, you now turn your steps back into the house. There's a new spring in your stride, a sense of purpose fueled not just by the fresh air but also by the increasingly urgent anticipation of breakfast. The long and rather elaborate ritual of transforming yourself from a slumbering mortal into an impeccably attired pillar of society has, understandably, stoked a healthy appetite. Your destination, the breakfast room. This is not the grand, and perhaps somewhat intimidating, formal dining room reserved for later meals. The breakfast room is typically a smaller, more intimate space, often situated to catch the morning sun, should it deign to make an appearance. As you enter, what you might be greeted by a welcome warmth, a distinct contrast to the lingering chill of your upstairs bedchamber. A low fire might be cheerfully crackling in the grate, its glow reflecting on the polished mahogany of the sturdy breakfast table and the array of comfortable, though still upright, chairs. A substantial sideboard stands against one wall, perhaps already bearing some preliminary offerings or awaiting the arrival of more. The air here is different too, carrying the nascent, comforting aromas of brewing coffee or tea, and perhaps the faintest hint of toasting bread. It's an atmosphere of relative informality, though still impeccably ordered, a gentle easing into the day's more structured demands. And there, likely laid out on the breakfast table or perhaps on a dedicated stand nearby, is one of the morning's key protagonists, the newspaper. Or perhaps newspapers, if you subscribe to more than one. In your era, the morning paper is not just a source of casual information. It is a vital conduit to the wider world, a daily chronicle of empire, politics, commerce, and society. The Times is almost certainly present, its dense columns of print a familiar and respected sight. The paper itself is a substantial broadsheet, perhaps even ironed by a diligent housemaid to dry the ink thoroughly and make the large pages easier to manage. A quirky, practical touch of the Times. The rustle as you pick it up is a sound as integral to the Victorian morning as the clink of teacups. You unfold it. The sheer acreage of newsprint, almost enough to serve as a surprisingly effective tablecloth or an emergency sail, should the need arise. As you settle into your customary chair, the one that offers the best light or the most commanding view of the room, or perhaps just the one closest to the anticipated coffee pot, your thoughts naturally turn to the impending sustenance, the porridge plans of our section title. While the aroma of coffee or tea is tantalizing, you're also contemplating the more substantial fare. Will it be a hearty bowl of porridge to start? That stalwart of British breakfasts, perhaps followed by eggs, boiled, poached, or fried, accompanied by rashers of bacon, grilled kidneys, or even a portion of savory kedgeree. That delightful concoction of smoked fish, rice, and eggs. The Victorian breakfast, for those who could afford it, was no meager affair. It was designed to fortify one for the rigors of the day. For now, though, before the full panoply of dishes arrives, there is the paper. You scan the headlines. Today's choice: an impending global crisis unfolding in some distant corner of the empire. A heated debate in Parliament about a new bill. A detailed report from the stock exchange. Or perhaps a slightly less earth-shattering, though equally discussed, column on social etiquette, or a review of last night's theatrical performance? Riveting stuff. Indeed. And essential for any gentleman who wishes to be considered well-informed and capable of contributing intelligently to conversation later in the day. Reading the news at breakfast was a staple of the Victorian gentleman's routine, a quiet ritual of absorption and reflection. Historians of communication and media studies often debate the extent to which the Victorian press actively shaped public opinion on critical issues like imperial expansion or domestic social reforms, versus the degree to which it merely reflected the prevailing sentiments of its predominantly middle and upper-class readership. Some individuals, with a penchant for quirky beliefs, held that reading distressing news during breakfast could lead to indigestion, a notion you might momentarily ponder as you encounter a particularly troubling dispatch from abroad. Perhaps you'll strategically skim past that until after the first fortifying cup of tea. For now, the breakfast room is relatively quiet, a calm before the storm of clinking cutlery, and, if family members are to join you, the ensuing familial pronouncements and discussions. You might hear the distant sounds of the household fully stirring, the efficient, almost invisible work of the servants preparing and delivering your meal. But this interlude, with the crisp pages of the newspaper spread before you, and the promise of a warm, substantial breakfast tantalizingly close, is a uniquely satisfying part of your elaborate morning preparations, a moment to connect with the world while still cocooned in the comfort of your own well-ordered home. You are settled in the breakfast room, the vast expanse of the time spread before you like a newly discovered map to the day's events, as we established in Section 13. The aroma of brewing coffee, or perhaps fragrant Darjeeling tea, has been teasing your senses, a warm counterpoint to the lingering memory of your chilly awakening. And now, the moment arrives. A servant, moving with that practiced, almost invisible efficiency, places your first cup of the day before you. It steams gently in a fine china cup, the silver pot beside it gleaming softly in the morning light, filtering through the window. You reach for the cup, its warmth a welcome sensation against your fingers. This is it, the culmination of a long and surprisingly arduous series of rituals. You lift the cup, inhale the rich aroma, and then take that first, revitalizing sip. It's a profound moment, the warm liquid coursing through you, a balm to the system. The very instant your brain finally agrees to fully boot up and engage with the wider world. The taste, whether the robust bitterness of coffee or the delicate fragrance of tea, is exquisite, a reward for your morning's labors. As the warmth spreads, you find yourself reflecting, almost unconsciously, on the grand ritual you've just completed. It seems an age ago that you were roused from slumber into the unheated chill of your Victorian bedroom, that chilling awakening of Section 1. Then came the bracing shock of the icy ablutions at the washstand in Section 2, a true test of fortitude. You mentally revisit the careful, perilous navigation of the razor's edge in Section 3, followed by the gritty reality of powdered pearly whites in Section 4. Your crowning glory grooming in Section 5 involved enough brushing to tire an ordinary man before you even began to construct the layers of linen in Section 6. The starch and stiffeners of Section 7, that wrestling match with the detachable collar, and the artistic endeavor of the cravat still feel very present around your neck. You recall the precision required for your waistcoats and woolens in Section 8, ensuring every layer sat perfectly. Even the boot-blacking ritual of Section 9 achieving that mirror shine played its part. Then came the finer flourishes in Section 10. The scent, the watch, the cufflinks, adding that final touch of elegance, all before the mirror scrutiny of Section 11 confirmed your impeccable presentation. Even the brief airing before breakfast in Section 12 felt like a necessary punctuation mark. And now, here you are, in Section 13's domain. Papers and porridge plans underway, this very sip initiating the summation. By the time you're ready for breakfast, you've already completed a multi-stage endurance event. The day itself should be relatively easy after this. It's a well-established historical fact that the Victorian gentleman's morning routine, particularly for the upper and middle classes with their exacting standards of dress and hygiene, was often incredibly lengthy and involved many distinct steps. This wasn't mere vanity, it was an integral part of performing one's social role, an outward manifestation of inner discipline and order. You briefly consider patenting your morning routine as an extreme sport, but decide society isn't quite ready for that level of commitment. This daily recreation of the self, from a state of nature to a polished public figure, was a curious blend of private struggle and public presentation. While you might have felt the cold, the sting of the razor, or the constraint of the collar, the image presented to the world was one of effortless composure. Some Victorians, in their quest for self-improvement or adherence to niche philosophies, might have even added other quirkier elements to their morning, perhaps reading auras or engaging in other esoteric self-assessment practices beyond the purely physical as a final private check before facing the public eye. Cultural historians continue to analyze the Victorian gentleman's elaborate grooming as a complex interplay of class performance, the careful construction of gender identity, burgeoning consumerism, fueled by a bewildering array of new products, and deeply internalized disciplinary regimes stemming from societal expectations and pervasive moral codes. For you, however, as you take another sip of your fortifying beverage, the feeling is simpler a sense of profound readiness. You are armored, prepared, and equipped to meet the demands of your day, whether they involve navigating the complexities of business, engaging in parliamentary debate, managing your estates, or partaking in the intricate dance of social calls. The world awaits, and you, at last, are ready for it. And there we have it. We've journeyed together from the bone-chilling dawn to the first civilizing sip of a hot beverage, surviving the surprisingly elaborate morning preparations of a Victorian gentleman. I hope you feel almost as exhausted, yet impeccably well-groomed, as I do just narrating it. It certainly gives a new appreciation for our modern conveniences like thermostats and disposable razors, doesn't it? If you've enjoyed this deep dive into the sartorial and tonsorial trials of the 19th century gentleman, do give this video a like. Subscribe if you haven't already, and perhaps share it with a friend who takes a surprisingly long time to get ready in the morning. They might find they have a kindred spirit across the centuries. We'll be exploring another fascinating and hopefully equally comfortable corner of history in our next session. Thank you for joining me on this rather extensive morning routine. Until next time, sleep well, and may your morning routines be significantly less demanding. Good night, everyone.